Chapter 6. The Choice. Another pin drop silence. Elric couldn't believe what God just revealed to him. Another mind-boggling plot twist. First, it was fighting against Demon God, and now that his predecessor killed the chosen heroes of the other gods. Just hearing this made Elric regret his decision to agree with God of Darkness's proposal. Now he understood why the entire world of Vantria had issued a kill-on-sight order for those who followed, worshipped God of Darkness, and were wiped out 3 centuries ago. It was his predecessor who basically made an enemy out of the entire world and now had implicated Elric as well. Geoi. Tell me that's a lie. That joke is not even funny. Elric said as he still had not come to accept the truth. It was understandable, as every religious branch or empire would cherish the chosen heroes which were to complete the task ordered by their god and treat them with the utmost care, hospitality and respect. And to have them killed. Not just one of them, but all 11 of these heroes by one who was tasked with the same mission as them. No wonder all the ruling authorities, regardless of their qualms and indifferences with each other, would be united to massacre the main party responsible and anyone associated with them. And that is why God of Darkness and his followers have been rooted out of annals of history 300 years ago. Doesn't that mean I'll be killed off as soon as I enter your world and somebody knows my real identity as your chosen hero? Elric asked with a pitiful face. He had just reached the peak of the mountain, only to fall straight inside a volcano. Fuck, my bad luck won't leave me even in my second life. Elric lamented on his extremely disastrous luck. And he had no other choice to do it anyway, or he'll be forever stuck inside the world boundary. Now what? How am I even supposed to kill the demon god? You just raised the game difficulty from hell mode to impossible mode. This is beyond hopeless already. I don't think that I can do it even if I had 10 more lives. Elric said with a depressed expression on his face. If he wasn't in his soul form now, he'd already be shedding tears. Naturally, you'll have to conceal that fact. Until you're strong enough to face the entire world by your own at least. God said as if this was something very normal. Elric rolled his eyes. Facing the world by yourself? Does he think it's that easy? Wouldn't this entail that Elric will have to live like a criminal, a thief, a prey running away, as he would be constantly hunted down by the entire world? Don't worry. I naturally have the means to conceal your arrival. Neither gods and nor their followers would be able to detect it. Also, the fact that your original body being destroyed would become our advantage. God said, trying to comfort Elric, who seemed on the verge of committing suicide again. What do you mean? What does that have to do with my original body? Elric asked. All the gods and their followers always have to go through a grand ceremony with hundreds of magicians partaking in the summoning ritual. Even for our world where magical energy is flowing in abundance, breaking the world barrier and summoning a person takes huge amount of magic. That is enough to cause a spike in the magical energy of the world. Noticeable even from 10 kilometers. And that's why every summon is accounted for. On top of that, they all come with their original bodies in our world. Unlike you, whose body was reduced to dust after your death. God explained the whole ordeal as Elric didn't have any knowledge or information on how things worked in the world of Vantria. God then continued. And me being the one summoning you is also the major factor. Other gods can't summon the souls of the dead from other worlds at all. I'm the only one who can do it since I'm the manifestation of death and darkness. Bringing something like a soul of someone deceased is not even worth mentioning. Other gods can at most open the world boundary and take a peek at the world they intend to summon a chosen hero from. God said with a smug smile as he reveled in the sense of superiority he was feeling because of his specialty. Then how do I enter your world without a body? Don't tell me I'm going there in this form. Like a ghost or a wraith? Elric wondered and asked. Naturally, we'll have to construct a new body for you. Or I can simply put your soul inside of someone who died just a few hours ago. Take your pick. God spoke like a true professional and flicked his imaginary glasses with his forefinger. Author. Inserts Subarashi meme. Wait. You said before that we humans have the highest affinity with magic in your world. Even if I were to go in a new body or transferred inside someone else's body, wouldn't I be just a normal person and weaker compared to other heroes? Elric asked, making a valid point. Not exactly. I've done my research over decades about this matter. And I found that it's not the physical body but your soul. Compared to the inhabitants of our world, your souls are brighter like a midday sun. And not only that, they can also absorb and accumulate magical and natural energy over time. And hence you can become as strong as a demigod. The physical body is just a convenient medium. God explained, revealing his knowledge-seeking mind when it came to death and souls. Elric, who had come to terms with his upcoming fate, started thinking about these two options. So can you really construct me a body out of nothing? I won't be reborn as an undead or a skeleton, right? Elric asked. He had to be cautious here. Otherwise, who knows if he'd become undead or a walking talking skeleton who would be killed at first sight by anyone he met. That death won't even be worth pitying. Rather, anyone who heard about it would roll on the floor laughing their ass off. Who do you think you're talking to? Even though I'm not God of life, I do possess that power. And not only that, I can make you a body of your specifications. No matter what color, height or build you want. I am an expert at that. God started flexing about his useless talent as if he was doing a great honor to Elric. In the next moment, however, Elric, who had been mostly curious till now, looked extremely shocked, and suddenly there was a greedy and evil grin on his face. This whole thing meant that he could finally achieve that ideal body he always dreamt of in his previous life. The body of a Greek god or one of those superhero movie actors he looked up to for body aesthetics. But Elric didn't show the excitement on his face. Instead, he appeared as if he was giving it a good thought. And asked again, and what about the second option? Would I have the memories of the person I'm transmigrated in? At this query, God responded quickly. No. Something like possessing someone's memories is tied to their soul. Once you die and your soul leaves the mortal body, there is no connection of consciousness left. So you won't inherit the memories of the previous occupant. However, I don't think I need to remind you about how you'll be tied to that person's past and people they once knew. And since you can't reveal that you're no longer that person and someone else, you'll have to play the part. But this does have its advantages. I can transfer you inside the body of someone who was a very influential person in our world. Like a royalty or even an emperor if we have the options available. So think about it carefully. God said and left Elric to think about it alone. A dozen minutes passed. Elric was lost in his thoughts, continuously thinking about the pros and cons of both scenarios. If he chose to go with a newly made body of his choosing, he will not have any ties to anyone and would be free to do anything he wanted. He won't have to answer to anyone and could easily fake out his background as well if someone asked him. This could help him in the long run, aside from the most obvious advantage of having a perfectly made body of his own. But on the other hand, he'd be penniless, there would be no one he knows or have any means to get settled quickly. He'd be homeless, backgroundless, would know nothing about the world, and nobody to help him in his journey to do the impossible task of killing the demon god. The other option, however, gave him a lot of advantages. Like if he chose the body of someone very influential or someone who had the access to a lot of resources at their beck and call. That'd save him tons of trouble. He could simply be reborn in the body of some prince who died, an emperor who was close to death, or a great general or an aristocrat who was respected by everybody. If these choices were available to them, that is. This would enable him to adjust himself very quickly inside the world of Vantria and also let him focus on his main goal without having to struggle just to establish himself in the world. But just like the first option, this one also had a lot of disadvantages of its own. For example, if he were to be transmigrated inside someone who once held a huge authority before their death, naturally there would be a lot of explaining to do about how he came back to life. And since he wouldn't inherit the memories of the previous owner, he won't know anyone except the people the original owner was close to. And if he feigns some lie or something like losing his memories, that'd also mean that the new body of that person will hold no power for the time being. Rather, others would try to get rid of him on the accords of having him lost all his memories. Or even claim that he made a deal with the devil. What's next will be a grand crucifixion in the central street of the city. Plus there would be issues regarding the health and state of the original body, such as old age or any former disease or illness or the body being too weak. Also the connection with other people. Like if he were to be born in the body of an old man, he'd have a wife, children, and grandchildren to deal with. If he was born as a kid or a teen, even if that was a prince of a country, the actual power he'd hold will be in the name only. And naturally, Elric will have to deal with the hassle of political issues and drama as the heir or a scion of a king/emperor. There was too much unnecessary burden that will be thrown at him. And because of these advantages and disadvantages, Elric was thinking very carefully about what would be the best choice. And at the same time, he was thankful to God of Darkness for at least offering him the choice. Otherwise, he had read plenty of mangas, novels and manhwas where the main character just gets thrown inside the body of someone else and has no other choice but to live like them or suffer through the problems they've been going through. Elric straight up hated that scenario, even in stories where you just suddenly wake up as someone else and find yourself at odds and have to go through a lot of nonsense. Elric, who also had once fallen in this cycle, knew the story setting and patterns well. He had come to realize them after years of voraciously feeding his brain about these stories. Like hell, he was going to live one of those loosely based storylines only appealing to little children and newbies who just entered the world of fantasy and fictional stories. To put it in a word, Elric was a goddamn war veteran compared to these people. He had the experience of a decade and a half living that very life. He had seen through it all, he had lived through it all. Let it be TV shows, superhero movies, reading mangas, manhwas, manhuas, novels and other stuff. He had an eidetic memory, so he was a walking talking ancient archive of all of these stories and the information. What he knew was just beyond comprehension. After overthinking all the possible scenarios and their consequences, Elric finally made up his mind. He looked towards God of Darkness with a resolute gaze and said,
First choice.
Elric said and folded his arms together.
Really?
Why not the second? It is the most beneficial and will save you the hassle. Didn't you say that you don't want to work too much and waste your life on it? God asked as he was puzzled by Elric's choice. He too was new at this because his previous chosen heroes were summoned exactly the same way as the heroes of the other gods. Although he had the ability to personally summon someone from another world, he never actually had a need or a reason to. So he assumed that Elric would decide on the easy and smoother way. But to his surprise, Elric chose the most unconventional way here. Because there were just too many odds against him in the first choice scenario. If he himself was in Elric's position, he'd obviously take the second option. Too many complicated reasons. You wouldn't understand even if I told you all of them. I'd rather do this whole thing on my own terms. And since when I have been dependent on others or cared about what others think of me, something like family, friends, lovers or a community holds no value if you take away the reason for their existence. Only because of responsibilities, need, order or liabilities are these relationships and bonds formed. In the first choice, I'll be free of it all. And I won't have to look after anyone else but myself. And I definitely won't be doing the same mistakes as my past life where I had no choice to begin with. This time, I'll choose everything on my own accords. This time, I will be in complete control of my own life. Elric said, his expression was oozing out his determination.
Strange indeed.
If any of your predecessors were in your place, they would have chosen the second option. You on the other hand, taking an unconventional turn is surprising to me as well. Said God of Darkness. God turned his gaze back to Elric and said,
Fine.
Now time to decide your divine abilities. Chapter 7. The Selection.
The moment of truth has come.
After all the discussion and decisions, it was the most important part of this whole arrangement. Because it will decide exactly how Elric would be able to plan his path towards achieving his goals. Because these divine abilities were not just going to be his way to gain strength, rather they'd be his cheat codes. Elric, who had the knowledge of a majority of such scenarios where a reincarnated person in mangas and novels would be granted such abilities in these stories. But because of his experience, he had read a lot of these stories and knew where would any type of such so-called divine abilities lead him in the future. So he had to look through all of these carefully and choose the most suitable ones based on his situation when he'll be thrown in sooner in the world of Vantria. Since he had to choose them beforehand, he naturally had to look for the most useful ones with the greatest potential. The ones which would not only help him become stronger, but also become his trump card and save his life whenever he was in a situation where he could most definitely die again. Though it would have been most preferable by the Elric of the past, but now that he was going to give his life another chance, he had to make it easier and convenient as much as he could. These abilities would not only enable him to accomplish the end game, but also shape his future.
I'm ready.
Show me, said Elric. You're allowed to choose only 2 divine abilities. Every god gives them to their heroes. And each god possesses their unique divine abilities related to their law of existence. However, you won't get to choose these powers again. So you must think about it very carefully. God said and waved his left hand. Suddenly over 50 huge monoliths as big as a house appeared in front of Elric and started lining up in a queue. Some of them emitted gold, some silver and some bronze light coming out of them as if they were classified in tiers based on their usefulness. However, there were also 3 dark ones that didn't emit any light at all. More like they were sucking in the nearby light in them. Elric understood that these were the abilities he'd be granted after choosing, and his future approach towards his goal will be dependent on them. He looked at these portraits and the information about their use and how to use them started flowing in his mind. mind control, summoning undead, teleportation, telekinesis, telepathy, levitation, integration, mimic, clairvoyance, sage's eye. Around 50 of such random abilities appeared on each of these monoliths, and all of them were in their utmost peak grade. They were simply perfect, without any flaws. Elric started touching each of these monoliths with his hand, and somehow, he was feeling an innate connection towards them. He felt like each one of these divine abilities were calling out to him and asking him to accept them. But Elric didn't stop or fell for the temptation. He sternly kept browsing through all of them one by one. He could not afford to mess it up. After some time, he had browsed through all the gold, silver, and bronze monoliths. He curiously asked,
What's with the bright lights?
Why are they shining in different colors? God simply looked at Elric and said, Gold's ones are the most chosen ones by your predecessors. Like at least 4 times for the 2 slots they were given. Silver ones 3 times, and bronze ones 2 times. What about those black ones?
Elric asked. Not even once.
God replied.
All these abilities are simply amazing and can be used for extremely favorable outcomes. No wonder my predecessors chose many of these. If used properly, they can even help me create an empire of my own and reach at the strength enough to fight against the demon god within a decade or 2. Simply astounding. Elric nodded in approval. But in the next second, he retorted, however, all of them are bound to certain conditions. For example, mind control. I will need to keep looking in a person's eyes for at least a minute and have a suggestive conversation to control their minds to work for me or do my bidding. At the time of fight for life and death, it won't be useful at all because the enemy obviously won't be interested in settling things with words. And the necromancer ability needs me to rob graveyards to make the deceased part of my summoned army. Too useful for the future, but also very tedious. Clairvoyance can only see through a certain time in the future, but can't be used consequently. I'll need to wait for few hours to use it again. Great potential. It can also save me from being tricked by others and stop my possible death as well. But still, the conditions to use it lacks potential, as it will only give me a head start but not actually help me change the situation. Telekinesis has restrictions on distance or how far my reach is and also how much weight I can lift or exert through it. Would have been too OP if I could move a mountain with it. Sage's Eye only gives out information about everything as long as it's not of divine rank or the information is sealed by the gods themselves. But what use could I make of it if I don't have enough skills or means to use such information to get an upper hand? Telepathy needs me to at least once touch the person I want to read minds of or establish a mind link. Will definitely help me look like a creep and a pervert for sure. Elric gave a thumb up to God. And then he started listing out all the bothersome terms and conditions of these divine abilities, which were subject to market risks. God, who once had a prideful face when he showed these abilities to Elric and expected a face of awe and worship, was left speechless. These were the goddamn divine abilities for God's sake. Author. See what I did there?
LOL.
And this guy was complaining how they were inconvenient and only useful for certain situations with no flexible uses. He had indirectly flipped a middle finger to God himself, who once presented all these abilities to all his summons that came before Elric. God, for the first time in his billions of years of existence, felt like crying. Elric was basically kicking him in the face over and over. And each time, the intensity was increasing more than before. Even Cravel gave God a look full of pity. Why don't you create your own divine abilities then? God could only retort in his mind. Saying it out loud would only diminish his image as an almighty god who was triggered just by few words of a dead man's soul. Just as he was about to speak, Elric turned his gaze to the 3 dark monoliths and started checking them out.
Ability absorption. Dimensional law. Synthesis.
Just as the information about these 3 divine abilities was fully processed by Elric's mind. He was out of words. He read through them and an expression of puzzlement appeared on his face. The abilities had details on them such as Divine Ability. Ability Absorption. Allows the owner of the divine ability to absorb the physical and magical abilities of the targeted being without any complications or side effects to the owner. However, the owner will still have to follow through with the restrictions and terms of use for these individual abilities. Condition. The target whose abilities are to be absorbed must be dead before using this ability on them. Otherwise, the absorption will be a failure. And the target must not have been dead for too long, and the physical body must be in a shape enough to completely extract these abilities, should they entail having something such as blood requirements or body parts. There will be a failure if the target's body is destroyed beyond measure or the required quantity needed for ability absorption is inadequate. Then he read the second divine ability. Divine ability. Dimensional law. The owner of this divine ability has access to all the space and void around them. They can open the void and enter it without any harm to the physical body. Also allows a part of the body to be placed inside the void at the same time, while the rest of the body exists in the real world without harming the original body. The distance of travel and time user can stay inside the void increases with the increase in mastery of the law. Condition. The owner must be extremely efficient in the space magic and law. This divine ability is only accessible when the owner has met the prerequisite conditions. Then he moved to the third divine ability. Divine ability. Synthesis. Allows the owner to recreate two different physical abilities and magic skills to form a new variant based on the working principles of the abilities and skills in the synthesis procedure. Abilities created will have no side effects on the owner's body or mental condition. This ability can also be used to create creatures by mixing different sets of beings and abilities. Condition. Certain levels of prerequisite conditions, such as physical ability and skills required for the process, must be met before synthesis can be done. The strength and specialty of the creatures created will depend upon the base subjects they were experimented with. Elric was out of words again. These three abilities were something he did not expect to be here on the list. He understood why his predecessors didn't choose these three divine abilities even once. The required conditions for them were indeed very troublesome and hard to achieve. But Elric was different from all of them. Unlike those who came before him, they were all either great tacticians, great leaders, or generals of their respective countries and their era. But none of them had the experience of being an otaku, a nerd, and a geek. So naturally, they found these three abilities extremely useless and hard to cultivate. From a normal person's perspective, all of these were not worth choosing at all, as they needed a lot of time to be perfected, and definitely a lot of time would be wasted just to meet the perquisites of these divine abilities. For example, they will always have to kill someone or a monster to absorb their abilities. They will have to learn and understand space and time law, which was easier said than done. And synthesis ability will surely have a lot of restrictions upon it when trying to merge two different abilities and creatures as well. So in the long run, these three divine abilities would give them more trouble, waste their time, which would hinder their path to becoming stronger, and even make things complicated, as they will have to do their research and spend a lot of time on it as well. So these abilities were the worst options available. But in the next minute, Elric looked at God of Darkness and said, I want them. I want all three of them. To his decision, both God and Cravel looked at him together and shouted, Are you out of your goddamn mind? Chapter 8. True Identity. God of Darkness and Cravel kept staring at Elric as if they were looking at a madman. They were out of wits on why would Elric choose these divine abilities, which were most complicated, very time-consuming to develop and very difficult to gain mastery over. There was a reason why these divine abilities were untouched and not even considered by all the previous 8 chosen heroes who came before Elric. But not only did he want to choose these oddities, he also wanted all three of them, which was against the rules set by the gods. What's there to be surprised about? I have my reasons to choose these three. You chose me out of those millions of souls because you needed someone different to complete the mission, right? Well, these three are the ones I want. There aren't going to be alternatives, and I won't change my mind. Elric said with a firm and resolved tone. Mortal, why must you choose these three abilities out of them all? There are many divine abilities that can make you very strong in a short amount of time. Not only will they save you a lot of time, they'll also help you create an influence in our world to the point where no empire or church will dare to declare an open war with you when you reveal your identity to the world. So why must you waste this chance on the most ignored divine abilities in the past 3,000 years? Cravel decided to ask out of his utmost curiosity towards Elric's decision. As I said before, if it was anyone else who came before me, they'd definitely choose the other divine abilities. But I'm not them, and my circumstances are different from them. Because none of them were going to hunted down by the entire world. Unlike them, I can't walk around people openly and declare that I'm the chosen hero of God of Darkness. There's no one coming to my aid, and no one is going to provide for me or look after me. Unlike the other abilities, these three can help me hide, survive, and become stronger behind the shadows, and no one will notice or try to uncover my identity. Elric explained. His reasoning was right, as none of his predecessors were in the same situation as him. And this made him consider his options based on practicality than just becoming stronger in a short time. Besides, you still don't know the potential of these three divine abilities at all. Let me put it in simple words. Though they're all complicated and hard to complete mastery over, the number of outcomes I can achieve are simply unimaginable. Not only they can help me get stronger bit by bit without raising the suspicion of the others, but they will also ensure my survival to the most degree. Something I need the most after I enter your world. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. Elric replied, refusing to go into too many details. Only he knew exactly what potential did these three divine abilities had. Ability absorption was one of the most meta abilities he had seen in hundreds of novels, mangas, and animes. Of course, who didn't know about a 35-year-old guy getting reincarnated as a slime in another world with a similar ability, just like ability absorption, which helped him get stronger by devouring his enemies and monsters and reach to a level where even the strongest beings in that new world had to acknowledge him and even slightly be wary of him. Of course, he was thinking about Rimuru Tempest from that time I got reincarnated as a slime. So when he saw ability absorption, the first thing Elric thought was how lucky he was and he had already hit the jackpot. But to put an icing on the cake, he saw the second divine ability, Dimensional Law. Any anime fan who watched Naruto and had enough information about it knew of one guy who put the entire world at a war just by himself. And he possessed the same ability similar to Dimensional Law, which would allow him to have one part of his body exist in a separate dimension, so when his enemies attacked him, he'd simply face them head-on and take hits even straight at his heart just to have enemies' weapon pass right through him, while he used that opportunity to kill his enemies by catching them off guard. Elric thought of none other than Obito Uchiha from Naruto Shippuden. But the awesomeness of Dimensional Law didn't end here. This divine ability allowed him to open a crack in the void and hide in it for the time being. And with time as his mastery progressed, he could also travel inside the void and exit out of it somewhere else. So in simple words, there was no actual place that could completely trap him or a place he couldn't enter with this divine ability. For example, he could get out of prison whenever he wanted or get inside a highly protected castle to kill someone and no one will ever find him. Obviously, Elric won't be able to achieve such results with his non-existent mastery over space and time law, but with time he could envision himself achieve that feat as well. And to fill your stomach with delicious food, there was the third divine ability, Synthesis. Since Elric wasn't going to have an OP system like many protagonists who get reincarnated in another world which would guide them, help them become stronger and give them rewards like epic swords or equipment, create stuff out of nowhere and things that shouldn't belong in that world based on its settings such as culture, technology, and scientific advancement, he needed a way to ensure his safety and find a reliable way that won't just help him become stronger, but rather way too OP. And Synthesis was offering him just that. By using ability absorption, he could gain both physical abilities and magical skills of his targets. But that's all there ever will be. He will naturally have to look for way too stronger enemies to learn badass abilities and skills. And they will vary from each other as well. But with Synthesis divine ability, not only could he merge the abilities he already learned, but he could also use it to merge different beings. For example, he could simply kill a monster, gain their abilities, and then later use that monster to merge with another monster to create his own version. Which will not be any weaker than the former, rather even more powerful. And Elric felt that these creations of his would naturally be loyal to him. Otherwise, Synthesis would not be called a divine ability if his own creations tried to kill him instead. With this ability, not only he could create a small army of monsters or people for him, he could also create new beings which he may need to do a specific task or job which required them to have a specific type of skills and physical advantage. In the future, he could just create an OP army of his creations with time, which could become comparable to the army of shadow soldiers of a certain Korean hunter. All Elric needed was just time to get stronger and experiment with these abilities. He naturally believed that this wasn't the only use of these three divine abilities. This was more likely just the cover of the book. And there would be far many more applications and different uses that remain to be explored. Compared to the other divine abilities, these were not as easy or convenient as other divine abilities, but the potential was simply unimaginable. And if he were to fight someone like Demon God on even terms, he needed not only just one form of power but everything he could find and make use of in the world of Vantria. If he wanted to stay alive at the end of the fight, that is. Because all the predecessor chosen heroes of the 12 gods had already made it obvious that they all failed to kill him no matter how strong they had become. Elric didn't believe that all of them were stupid and ran into a fight to the death with the demon god without preparing beforehand about every single aspect of the battle and how they were going to emerge victorious. At this time, God finally decided to speak up. Even if I were to comply with your decision, I still need to remind you that you can only choose 2 divine abilities. Not more than that. To his reply, Elric gave him an expression of pity instead. Are you stupid? God was startled, and then the next second, he was enraged. What did you just say? Do you think I won't torture you for the end of time, just because I have no choice but to choose you as my chosen hero?
Geode spoke angrily.
To his spine-chilling voice, Elric replied.
Think about it.
You said that this is probably going to be the last chance the gods have to kill the demon god before he becomes a full-fledged god like you. So do you really believe that the other gods are going to keep their word and give only 2 divine abilities to their heroes? For all I know, they'd be giving them at least 4 to 5 divine abilities just to increase their winning chances. After all, whichever god's hero kills the demon god, she would become the entire world's savior. And that would bring fame to that god's name. Fame big enough to have many living beings in the world to start worshipping that god. So obviously they won't be holding back. Don't tell me you gods are bound to keep your word for a verbal pact?
Haha.
Elric explained his reasons for calling God stupid. And even the god of darkness was left speechless, suddenly realized that Elric was right. Given the fact that this was their last chance, no one was going to hold back no matter how much they wanted to honor their pact. And like Elric said, the winner would be literally worshipped by the entire world, and the god who brought them would become the entire world's most famous and worshipped god. Even for someone like God of Darkness who was hated and now forgotten by the entire world, this could bring back his former glory overnight. He too was tired and irritated by the constant mockery and banters of the other gods because of the actions of his previous chosen hero. He could not kill them, just as they could not kill him. So he wanted to say "ye suck it" to them as well. This was also a great opportunity for having one up on all the other gods.
But he wasn't a fool.
He looked at Elric and said, "3 should be the maximum amount of divine abilities you should choose. Because these abilities will be embedded into your soul and need a fraction of your soul essence to keep functioning. With time, your soul will get stronger in our world. But so will the consumption of soul essence. Any more than 3 divine abilities and it'll adversely affect your soul and your future strength. Since the other gods aren't any knowledgeable about death and souls like me, I'm sure those idiots will give 4 to 5 divine abilities to their heroes." God replied as a grin appeared on his face because of the fact that other gods were going to suffer a huge misfortune. He liked the idea of it.
Fine.
I agree with you. You can have all 3 of these. God said, and the 3 house-size monoliths exploded into millions of pieces and 3 orbs of pure energy came out of them. All 3 of these orbs quickly came in contact with Elric's soul form and started merging with him. In just a minute, they completely merged with his soul form and no traces of them were left. They all had completely unified with Elric. Now, it is time for us to prepare your body. And then you can enter Vantria. God said with a little bit of excitement. But just when he was about to speak again, Elric spoke again. Wait. Elric looked towards Cravel this time and asked. Aren't you going to give me something as well?
Elric asked.
What? Why would I give you something, mortal? Hasn't my liege already given you 3 divine abilities? Cravel asked in a puzzled tone.
That's not enough.
Given the dire situation we're in, it'll hardly help me out. Or is it that you don't want to help me? Don't tell me all your grand display of loyalty and respect is just for the show, and you don't want to help in your liege getting back to his glory days. Elric asked in a provocative tone. He questioned Cravel's loyalty with the purpose of riling him up.
What did you say, mortal?
Cravel was angered to his core. Even red fumes were coming out of his glowing red eyes from inside of his helmet.
I'm just saying.
If it was anyone else in your position, they would have offered to provide extra help for their master without a question. I'm just surprised that you didn't, Elric said as a look of disappointment appeared in his eyes.
He shook his head. You dare.
I'll show you my loyalty towards my liege. Don't look down on me, mortal. Cravel said as he regained his composure. And in the next second, 6 different ancient symbols of different sizes and colors appeared in front of Cravel and started moving towards Elric, who was in his soul form. Quickly all these ancient symbols started entering inside him, and one by one, they appeared around different parts of his soul form, as if they were some ancient runes engraved on his body. The next second, Elric's mind received the information about what exactly were these ancient symbols and what did he actually receive. Holy fuck! Elric said to himself. He looked at Cravel with the utmost respect for the first time. Because of the information he received also informed him about who Cravel was. Elric only knew that Cravel was a demigod, but nothing more than that. But after he received the information in his head, he finally found out the true title of Cravel. Elric now finally understood that the being wasn't just some lackey of God of Darkness, but a being who would be respected and feared from no matter where he went. The ancient symbols were actually blessings that were bestowed upon Elric. And through their description, he saw the name.
Cravel, the war deity.
Chapter 9. The arrival. Yes, the war deity. The goddamn mutafriggin war deity. The being standing in front of him was the one who reached the level of a demigod by mastering all forms of war, all types of weapons and all types of combat techniques. Otherwise, he wouldn't have earned that title at all. If there was a title of God of War, Cravel would be it. As soon as Elric came to know Cravel's real identity as the war deity, he started looking at him differently. As someone who grew up reading books about great warriors of their era on Earth and then later getting hooked up on war-related novels and other forms of platforms, Elric had developed a form of respect towards such individuals. These were the real men. Elric diverted his attention towards the blessings he received and he was left speechless again. Blessings of the war deity. 1. War dominance, active. Emits an aura of dominance and supremacy 5 times stronger than the targeted enemy. No matter how strong or weak the targeted being is, the pressure and murderous aura will be sensed by all those who stand in the perimeter of the host. The area affected will keep increasing with an increase in the host's personal strength and emotions. 2. Weapon mastery, passive. Mastery over all weapons and things that could be used as a weapon. The mastery over all weapons existing in the world keeps increasing with the level of host's strength. Current level. A rank, master level, passive. Example, for swordsmanship, the host is already at a level of a swordmaster. Mastery levels: amateur, intermediate, expert, master, grandmaster, saint, deity.
3. Combat technique mastery passive.
Grants the user knowledge and experience over all forms of close combat techniques. Also allows user to understand and copy any target's combat techniques after practicing them. Current rank: master in all known combat techniques by the war deity. Mastery increases only when the user practices and performs these techniques to meet certain understanding and experience. 4. Survival instinct, passive. Grants the ability to sense extreme danger and killing intent directed towards the user. The range of this ability will keep increasing as the user gets stronger. Note: ability is upgradable and can be merged with other similar abilities. 5. Berserk God mode, active. Allows user to achieve 5 times the physical strength and stamina for a short time. Note: not applicable to magical skills or mana capacity. The host will be in a weakened state, only having 30% of the user's strength, for the next 24 hours after the activation period ends. 6. War deity body, passive. Grants a body capable of becoming 2 times stronger than the previous stage every time the user goes through long and tiring battles and breaks the threshold of his capabilities. After going through the blessings he received, Elric simply forgot how to speak. Because what Cravel gave him wasn't just mastery of weapons or abilities to dominate his enemies in battle. What he gave him was the biggest head start anyone will ever get if they were thrown into an unknown world. Elric was born with a weak body and never had physical training at anything. Not even normal sports or self-defense techniques. He could hold a sword in a video game or in his dreams only. Hell, he didn't even know how to properly hold a sword either without looking like an idiot or ending up hurting himself instead. Unlike what God of Darkness gave him through the 3 divine abilities he chose. These blessings wouldn't just help him become stronger or help him survive. Rather, they'd be far more useful than just gaining abilities or creating his army who will serve him. With these blessings, he'd save years of time spent on learning and practicing different types of weapons and how best to use them. Also, learning combat techniques was no joke. It took many people dozens of years to perfect them or reach just the rank of a master. But not only Elric would already have built-in knowledge and understanding of these, but he'd also be proficient right when he entered Vantria. He was already at master rank, which was way just unbelievable for a guy like him who never had an actual combat experience or killed anyone in his life. Survival instinct would help him sense if someone was targeting him from behind or following him from the shadows. That way he could be prepared to face a sudden attack or an ambush and might as well dodge a sudden arrow shot at his head. This was just too useful in his opinion. Survival instinct was something developed only by people with decades of experience in hunting or someone who had been through thousands of battles in their life. For someone like Elric who would be hunted down sooner or later if the word of his true identity as chosen hero of God of Darkness were to be leaked, survival instinct would save his life on many occasions. Not on just the battlefield, but it will also alert him in random and normal places if someone far stronger than him was targeting or wanted to harm him based on their killing intent. He'd know whom not to fight with and simply need to run away for his life. And there was also Berserk God mode. Like the description implied, he'd be 5 times stronger for a short time and it could save his life when he was truly in a pinch. Let's say somehow his dimensional law ability didn't work or he couldn't escape inside the void for some reason, such as the surrounding area being sealed by spatial law or some type of barrier or formation, Elric would be left at the mercy of fate. But with Berserk God mode, he'd receive a huge spike in his strength and it could be helpful enough to let him escape or even face his enemy head-on, who could be much stronger than him. This was a life-saving cheat code indeed. And let's not even talk about War Deity Body. This thing would just make him a total T-Rex compared to other heroes of the other gods. Because whether he liked it or not, Elric would be put in situations where he'd need to fight someone in authority, like forces of the Empire, or even people from the Church operating in that empire given his identity. He could see himself clashing against the other chosen heroes in the future, because they too would be well informed about the act of his predecessor, the 8th chosen hero of God of Darkness. So these heroes will naturally think of him as someone serving the evil or someone they had to exact revenge upon for their predecessors. So, with the War Deity Body he'd become twice as stronger every time he went past his limits, which naturally will require him to fight a lot of battles and go beyond his capabilities, and also will be on very rare occasions, most likely in the battle for life and death. But this can give him an upper hand over the other heroes in terms of physical strength alone. So it will also be extremely helpful in the near future. Elric finally broke out of his phased state and looked at Cravel again. He didn't hold any of his mocking or disappointed expression and said, I take my words back. After saying so, he bowed towards Cravel with utmost sincere expression. Cravel was left with a puzzled expression again, inside his helmet. This mortal was questioning his loyalty towards his liege not a minute ago and now retracted his statement and bowed half his body in front of him. Cravel, who was of the size of 5 stories building at the moment, could see Elric's way of showing respect. God of Darkness humphed slightly without showing the jealousy he was feeling. Because Elric didn't do that to him so far at all. Instead, he said fuck off, bastard, motherfucker, stupid, moron and many things he forgot to count. And because of this, Cravel was happy with Elric again. He said, "You stand up. No need for such formalities. Anyway, did you like my blessings?" Cravel asked without masking the smugness in his tone. Elric simply nodded like a puppy in response. Well then, here's something else. It's not a blessing, but some of my knowledge you will find very useful while venturing inside Vantria. Cravel said. Soon, a divine formation appeared over Elric's soul form and light made of different and bright colors descended towards his head. Elric started processing the gift he received. As he opened his eyes, he was again left with a joyful expression on his face. What he received wasn't any ability or skills. For the first time, he received a form of information and knowledge that he would be needing no matter where he went. Knowledge of all languages in the world of Vantria. Elric had worries about this from the beginning, just that he didn't speak about it at all. He was going into a different world, where existed different cultures, races, species, different regions and things he didn't even know about yet. So naturally, this world wasn't going to be someplace where everybody for some reason spoke in English. He was certain that God of Darkness and Cravel weren't talking with him in English either, as their gestures and body language acted very differently in accordance with their words and tone. They were using some type of magic or conversed with him using a telepathic connection. Many manga and novel authors always skipped this part in their work. In their stories, even the most ancient civilizations which existed tens of thousands of years ago also spoke in English. As if this wasn't a different world, but a Hollywood movie where even Wakandans spoke in English despite having their own mother tongue. What Cravel gifted him had saved tons of trouble, as not only he would be able to converse with people inside Vantria, he'd be able to communicate with, understand all the residents and species existing that resided in those regions. This also included understanding various types of languages, whether in form of verbal speech or writing. So he won't be lost in the world if he went somewhere unknown. After calculating everything that has happened so far ever since his reincarnation, Elric found himself extremely lucky. He was going to get another chance at life despite him refusing and wanting to die again. Neither was he randomly thrown into a different world, without any prior knowledge, nor suddenly woke up inside someone else's body. He was given a choice to even choose in which way he was going to enter inside Vantria. And unlike hundreds of reincarnated people in the stories he read, he was actually clear on his goal and how he will make his approach. Although he wasn't given some OP system or someone like Soul Remnant of some heaven-defying monsters will to accompany him on his journey, he still had the option to choose his divine abilities and had the time to plan how he will ensure his survival. He received enough superficial information about Vantria and how things work there, and what not to do if he wanted to stay alive. Cravel's blessings gave him the biggest head start and also an upper hand against those who will be or already were summoned inside the world of Vantria. so he can fight against them as well if the situation arose. After evaluating everything happened so far, Elric was content and truly happy. It felt like fate or destiny, whatever it was called, tried to make amends for his former life, which he didn't find worth living at all. This time, he was given the choice in which way he will live his new life. Elric wanted nothing more than freedom and control over his own fate. He looked at God of Darkness and Cravel and said, I'm ready. God of Darkness and Cravel both nodded at him. Have you thought of how your new body should look like? After we're done with that, I can send you inside our world.
Geode asked.
Elric then started giving him specifications of his new body, and after 1 hour of going over every minute detail and many redos, Elric's final physical body was ready. For some reason, Cravel approved more of it while God of Darkness found it very lacking. Elric on the other hand was drooling over his new look and the body he was going to live with in his new life.
From now on,
Elric Johnson no longer exists.
From now on, my name is Con. Elric declared. A new name.
A new life. He said with a newfound will to live. Suddenly yellow intrinsic patterns appeared on Elric's body and were ingrained into it. They disappeared without a trace the next second. God spoke. This is a link between you and me. Also the way for us knowing that you're still alive. Let's do it. Elric said, ready to embark on his new journey. Unbeknownst to Elric, another red ancient and divine pattern appeared on his back but didn't emit any light. Both God and Cravel noticed it but didn't speak, as if nothing happened and it wasn't intentional. God of Darkness didn't waste any more time and simply merged Elric's soul form with the newly created physical body. And after they were merged perfectly, he opened the very crack in the void from where he and Cravel entered inside the world boundary. I'm sending you somewhere remote and safe. Somewhere other gods, archmages of empires or popes of churches won't be able to detect your arrival. What happens from there will depend on you. And we won't be able to talk after this unless you find a way to recreate churches and temples for me again. And do remember the most important thing. God of Darkness paused his words and continued. Trust nobody and never let your guard down. God commanded in his firm and majestic tone as if it was his decree. Elric nodded back in affirmation. He understood the importance of not revealing his secrets and relying on only himself more than the beings in front of him. The crack exerted a form of gravitational pull on Elric, now Con. Inside the world of Vantria, in a deep jungle unknown, a small void crack appeared 5 meters above the ground, covered with dark green and lush grass. Suddenly a naked body of a man jumped down from the void crack and landed on his right knee and right fist on the ground, stabilizing himself in just a second. Finally. Chapter 10. Let the hunt begin. Who could this be other than Con?
Elric's new body.
Now Con was something he always dreamt of and wanted to have in his ideal standards of a physical body. He was 6 feet 3 inches tall, normal white skin tone same as his previous life. He had an angled but somewhat wider jaw. His face was well proportioned and very handsome. He had bulging muscles and 6-pack abs. Unlike his previous life, this time his hair color was completely black and not brown. They were smooth, soft and wavy. His hair was done from the right side from his perspective. They were long but not till his shoulder length long either. His eyes were black, unlike his former life where they were blue. It was to not stand out or being assumed as someone from a particular region, because blue eyes were always the most noticeable part of particular countries or regions. Black hair and eye color was very universal on the other hand.
Author. Take down notes, boys.
If you want 6-pack abs without working out, all you have to do is commit suicide and get reincarnated. Thanos. A small price to pay for salvation. His build was very balanced. His upper body had wider shoulders and big arms. His chest was big enough to align well with his build. His forearms were well proportioned as well, while the legs matched that of an athlete. From his appearance, he looked around 25 to 26 years old. Someone who would have a bodybuilding background or someone who trained for gymnastics. His facial structure was something that would be very striking no matter where he went. He chose to base it on the combination of both Bruce Wayne aka Batman and Dick Grayson aka Nightwing, two of the most handsome fictional characters he ever came across in his past life. Not too manly, but not too handsome either. That way he could look like someone not to be messed with and not too broody or serious either. So both younger and older people could approach him. He chose this age and build because of many reasons. Mainly because he didn't like or more likely detested stories where MC is reincarnated inside a 15-years-old kid who somehow can stand toe-to-toe against adults and people who train for their entire lives thanks to the almighty plot armor. He was 30 years old in his former life, for God's sake. Naturally, he wouldn't want to look like a kid again. And 30 or more would also make him look like a middle-aged person, which would stop him from entering some places or mix in a circle of youngsters. So 25 was the ideal age for appearance in his opinion. Con was brimmed with life and joy. He could finally feel the sensation of having a body again. He could feel the chill in the air and the breeze going past him. He smelled the earthly scent in the air. This was the time of early morning, so the sunrise brightened up his surrounding. He took a deep breath and finally felt alive. He didn't know how long it had been since he died on Earth. Maybe years or decades, or even thousands of years. But he didn't care about that now. This was going to be the world he would live in from now on. This was his second chance at life. Wait, I don't have a single cloth on my body. Con exclaimed and suddenly shouted, looking towards the sky.
You damn cheapskate of a god.
You couldn't even give me some clothes? God of darkness, my ass. They should call you God of beggars instead. Con said furiously. God of darkness was very pitiful. But he quickly came to terms with it. It wasn't the most important thing now. Well, based on average story pattern of a reincarnation novel and mangas, I will soon find some lone traveler in the jungle who is being chased by monsters, or some princess who is either being attacked by bandits or have people chasing after her. Which one will it be? Con spoke to himself and started looking around. But in the next moment, he heard a very grim and deathly growl from behind him. And the survival instinct ability kicked in, giving him goosebumps on his entire body. The growl felt like it belonged to some wild beast. A predator at that. Con turned his head around and saw what was standing just 5 meters behind him. 3 giant wolves, around 7 feet tall. Their eyes were completely red and their pupils looked like they were focusing on their prey. 2 of them had a mix of black and white fur, while the one standing in the front had completely red fur. It looked like it was the leader of the pack. These 3 wolves were prying at Con, trying to gauge how strong their morning breakfast was. To their surprise, Con was already having beads of sweat falling from his forehead. All he could do is say one word. Fuck. Amidst a vast and dark green forest, a naked man ran without the care of having onlookers like an exhibitionist. It's not like he wanted to, but he simply didn't have time to look for clothes or something to cover him. Behind the man ran 3 golden retrievers, 3 wolves. Con was running for his life as the 3 giant wolves ran behind with full murderous intent in their eyes and hunger in their stomachs. This was not the welcome Elric, now Con had imagined. WTF. That's not how a protagonist of a story is introduced in a new world. That damn fucker sent me right in front of a pack of wolves. Con cursed God of Darkness for having an extremely bad timing to send him into Vantria. But to no avail, all he could do was run off for his life. Con thought it'd be an easy job to kill monsters like they do in novels and mangas, but damn, these monsters weren't easy to defeat at all. The 3 wolves behind him were seasoned veterans. When he tried to run in any direction, one of them would close his way to exit and another one would close off the other possible route Con could take. And the leader of this trio was even fiercer. The red wolf didn't stop trying to go for the kill every time it attacked Con. Every move was done in a way to finish off its prey in a single sweep. Con was truly cornered because of their excellent teamwork. Now he understood how lethal just a pack of wolves was. Nothing like how they show in novels, mangas and animes where an inexperienced MC easily kills off an entire pack just using some lame magic skill or a single swing of his sword. These things knew how to hunt. If not for his extremely well-toned body full of muscles and agile build, Con would be barbecued by these wolves already. The trio kept running after Con and Con kept running like Usain Bolt. Only when Con came near a cliff did he stop. Fuck. No way around it. Wait, did they just intentionally lead me here? Con asked himself. Because this was indeed a great strategy. Because whether the wolves killed him or he jumped down, Con was bound to die and wolves were bound to enjoy a delicious meal. Con glared towards the wolves, mainly at the red wolf who looked like the alpha. Con knew he had war dominance aura to scare off his enemies thanks to the blessings given by Kravel, the war deity. But he didn't know exactly what was his strength level and the wolves hunting him. There wasn't any status window here telling him what his level and stats were and how strong his pursuers were compared to him. What do I do? Should I jump down instead? Con asked himself and took a look behind the cliff. Strong winds blew past his naked body and he saw how tall the cliff was above the ground level at the bottom. Damn it. I'll definitely die, I jump from here. Con had no other way to get out of his current predicament. There were many things he wasn't sure about. Like what if he even used both War Dominance Aura and Berserk God Mode together, and even that's still not enough to beat or even escape from his opponents. These were wolves after all. Not humans who would run out of breath after running extremely fast for some minutes. At this moment, the red wolf started walking towards Con with a visible mockery on its face. They had already seen that Con only looked big for a human, but not exactly brave or strong at all. Fuck it. Looks like I have no other choice. Though I don't know if I'll survive against these bastards, it's still better than jumping down. Con finally decided to give it all to his only chance. Forget about killing the demon god, he looked like he couldn't even kill a damn wolf here. Con didn't know how to activate his abilities yet, but he didn't feel like there wasn't something like a command word there either. Let's give it a try. He said to himself and thought about him being superior and stronger than his enemy now. Con remembered the part in the description of War Dominance that it also depended on his emotions. Since he had been running like a coward all this time, he didn't think about using it this way. Con calmed his mind, looked at the approaching red wolf. The other two wolves as usual covered his right and left side to not let him escape. Con finally cooled down and thought about that one feeling he rarely felt in his past life. Feeling of power and absolute domination. Like bloody hell, I'm dying in this unknown place. I finally got my second chance. Nobody is taking it away from me. Con shouted in his mind and raised his anger towards the approaching wolf. Suddenly, a black aura started exuding out of his body as Con raised his will to kill the wolf in front of him to survive. It was kill or be killed for real this time. In just the next few seconds, the aura that covered him dimmed a lot, but it didn't disappear completely. Rather, the tangible pressure around him increased as if gravitational force around Con became much more dense and heavier. The red wolf faltered its footsteps and felt like something as heavy as a boulder had been placed on its body. Its hind legs started giving out and its back arched down as well. It looked towards Con again, only to find him hard to look at. The red wolf felt like Con was no longer the meek prey, but something that was going to hunt them instead. But it tried to defy this pressure and forced itself to walk towards Con again. It was just 5 meters away from its prey now. Con was stunned. Damn it. It's not enough, he yelled in his mind. What about the combat techniques? I can't find a way to activate them either. Where the fuck is my game system, dude? Con cursed in his head. The War Dominance aura he was excluding wasn't strong enough to completely suppress the enemy in front of him. He also had the knowledge of all combat techniques given by Kravel, but he simply didn't know how to use or activate them. Don't tell me that they'll activate when I try to fight with this wolf for real. Like how real warriors fought in battle. And there's no command or way to perform these combat techniques. Con thought. If this was the only way, then he had no other choice but to seek out his enemy in a frontal clash. Berserk God Mode. Con shouted and dashed towards the red wolf which was trying to attack Con. Unlike the other two wolves who couldn't tolerate the pressure of his aura and has slumped down on the ground. Con ran towards the red wolf and quickly covered the distance between them. The red wolf bared his sharp claws and swung his left claw towards Con's chest. At this moment, however, Con felt like something happened to his own body. The moment he thought about going in Berserk God Mode, he felt like his muscles suddenly gained double the strength. His feet felt like they could move much faster, and as the claw of the red wolf was coming towards him, he gained a form of perception and his reflexes were twice faster than before. And slid below the upcoming claw and quickly gave an uppercut towards the red wolf's mouth. Bam! The red wolf got struck in the jaw and lost its balance. It was already fighting against the pressure from Con's dominance aura, and as he was struck hard in its mouth, it lost the balance. This was just enough to make it fall on the ground. Thump! The wolf fell. Con, on the other hand, felt like his fist nearly broke. Even in Berserk God Mode, which would make him 5 times stronger for a short amount of time, this barely met the mark to just land a solid hit on the red wolf. This means he was very weak against these monsters to begin with. Con quickly hit the fallen wolf on its head and groped its neck in a chokehold. His muscles and veins were popping out of his body and he felt like he was on a huge adrenaline spike, but his brain also told him that this was just temporary. Con mustered all his strength and used all his force on trying to snap the struggling wolf's neck. The wolf wriggled around with Con on its body and tried to bite him with its large and long fangs, struggling to get out of Con's arms. Ah! Con shouted and used all his strength to break the wolf's neck. Crack! The wolf whimpered for the last time before its body slumped down on the ground, dead on the spot. Suddenly, A ding notification sound appeared in Khan's head. Khan, on the other hand, didn't pay any attention to it and quickly ran towards the wolf that was covering his left escape route. He came close to the already slumping wolf and joined both of his hands in a joint fist and quickly slammed it on the wolf's head with all his might. A cracking sound was heard from the wolf's head and blood started leaking out of its ears and mouth. Khan was already on his last arrow. He knew he didn't have any more time. He gathered his remaining strength and ran towards the last remaining wolf, which was covering his right exit route. Khan could feel his strength running out already, but he kept running and came close to the wolf, which was finally somehow started resisting against Khan's dominance aura.
"Yay, no, you don't."
Khan yelled and jumped with all his strength in his legs and performed a downside kick like how they showed in martial arts movies.
Bang!
The kick landed right between the wolf's skull and broke it in half. Blood splattered on the ground, and Khan, who didn't time his landing and footing properly, also lost his balance and fell down.
"I did it."
Khan shouted as his body slumped on the ground and he lost all the strength in his body. Only now did he realize how much toll did the Berserk God mode took on his body. Currently, he didn't even have enough strength to lift his head up or change the side of his body. He was laying down in the grass and soil. He could feel the soil in his face and back as small pebbles were hurting his body. Barely made it. Khan came to realize how big of a close call this was. Any second later and he'd be ripped to shreds by that last wolf, which was lying just a meter close to him, its blood still leaking out of its smashed head. Fuck, this hurts. Khan could feel his entire body under immense pain. Mainly both of his fists and his right leg he used to kick the last wolf.
Ding!
Congratulations to the host for unlocking the following abilities for the first time.
Va Dominance. Combat Technique. Berserk God Mode. War Deity Body.
The host has learned chokehold, vertical stomp and joint fist combat techniques. Current mastery for these three the combat techniques, 30% on master rank. War Deity Body will undergo an upgrade after the host is no longer under weakened state. There you are.